Hello, my name is Andrew Armstrong, and I am a junior at Bloomsburg University studying secondary education social studies. Today's topic is the Russo-Ukrainian War. By the end of this presentation, you will be able to answer these questions. What is the Russo-Ukrainian War? Why did this war start? What has happened since the start of this war? And why is this important to international relations? First, let's start with what is the Russo-Ukrainian War? This is a conflict that began in 2014 and escalated into a full-scale invasion in February 2022. It is a war involving territorial control, national identity, and post-Cold War security order. This started when Russia illegally annexed Crimea in 2014, which is a part of Ukraine. Now, let's provide some historical background. These countries share a history in the former Soviet Union. Ukraine had declared independence in 1991. This was due to a split in ideology. Ukraine favors the European Union and NATO, while Russia seeks to maintain influence in post-Soviet states. So why did Russia enter the war? One reason why Russia entered the war was territorial and strategic goals. They wanted to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO and have control of Crimea, which gives them access to the Black Sea. They also had political motivations, where they could reassert influence over former Soviet states. They also could push Putin's narrative of historical unity between Russians and Ukrainians. Last, Russia entered the war because of security framing. Russia claimed NATO expansion as a threat to its national security. Now let's talk about why Ukraine entered the war. From Ukraine's point of view, the war is about protecting its independence and its right to choose its own future. Also, Ukraine has increasingly moved towards closer ties with the European Union and NATO. Because of this, there has been a strengthening national identity, pushing Ukraine towards fighting for their independence. They also joined this war because of the illegal actions of Russia with their annexation of Crimea. Let's talk about the recent escalation of this conflict, a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. On February 24, 2022, Russia launched a multi-front invasion of Ukraine. As I just noted, this was a significant escalation of the conflict. There had been no prior violence prior to this invasion. Russia aimed to capture the capital of Ukraine, Kyiv, and replace the government, essentially taking over. This affected international relations because many people were shocked by the invasion and placed sanctions on Russia following the invasion. This invasion was met by Ukrainian resistance as they were able to push back the forces of Russia out of the capital of Kyiv. Now, let's talk about key developments within this war. The Battle of Kyiv resulted in a Ukrainian victory, boosting morale and exposing the weaknesses of the Russian military, signaling that this would not be a quick war, but a prolonged war in which Ukraine will fight to defend its land. After failing to take Kyiv, Russia shifted its focus to the south and eastern borders, capturing significant territory along the coast. Next, Ukraine launched a surprise attack in the northeast to recapture a large amount of land from Russia, showing that Ukraine had the power to regain territory. This was known as the Kharkiv counteroffensive. Next, Ukraine was able to push Russian forces out of the key city of Kherson, the only regional capital Russia captured that year, boosting Ukrainian morale. Finally, in 2023 and 2024, both countries relied more on drones and missile attacks, showcasing a newer form of war that was not previously seen. Now, let's talk about international involvement. Ukraine received military aid from the United States and other NATO countries. Also, sanctions were placed on Russia. Next, Russia had received drones from Iran, artillery from North Korea, and limited backing from China. Also, this conflict is deeply rooted in international relations because energy prices, global food supply, and international diplomacy were all affected by this conflict. Countries have taken sides or tried to stay neutral based on their political and economic interests. What is important to note is that both sides received support from their own countries, Ukraine being more Western countries and Russia receiving support from countries like Iran, North Korea, and China. Now, I want to analyze an aspect of war that is often overlooked. Let's talk about the humanitarian impact. Because of this conflict, millions of refugees have been displaced across Europe. There have been countless civilian casualties and destruction of infrastructure within cities. There have also been alleged war crimes, specifically on the Russian side, which has caused uproar across international relations. Finally, let's talk about how the Russo-Ukrainian War is today. The front lines have largely stabilized, while heavy fighting continues in the east and the south, as shown in the attached image. Russia still controls parts of Donetsk, Luhansk, and Zaporizhia, as well as Kherson regions. Ukraine continues defensive operations, drone strikes, and limited offensive, showing that they are not willing to back down. Also, there has been political uncertainty on both sides on the progress of the war. In conclusion, this war is deeply rooted in history, geopolitics, and national identity. The Russo-Ukrainian War has affected international relations in several ways, as talked about within this presentation. The outcome remains uncertain and continues to evolve as the days go on.